Let's be honest, there's no guidebook when it comes to relationships. So we end up having to stumble through life trying to figure things out for ourselves. What if there was a podcast that found the answers for you, that provided insight to build a successful relationship and ultimately find the companionship you've always hoped for? Welcome to the Girls Ask Guys show, where we answer the questions most people are afraid to ask when it comes to lessons in life and love. It's time to master this thing called life together with your hosts, John and Ashley.
And welcome back to the Girls Ask Guys show, where we are your guide to dating, love, life, relationships, and everything else that life can possibly throw at you. And today, we are going to be helping you overcome your initial approach anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. Approach anxiety isn't uncommon. It's one of those things that I think it gets easier with time, but you still get it. I still get approach anxiety when I'm approaching someone new or I'm just meeting someone new in general.
Right. And I do get it to a point, and it depends on the time frame that I'm looking at. So if I only have like maybe 10, 15 seconds to actually catch somebody's attention, my approach anxiety goes through the roof. And it's one of those things that you get the butterflies in your stomach. You're like, damn, I hope I'm not going to fuck this up.
Right, exactly.
But if I know I have time, then it actually works in my favor. My approach anxiety goes down.
Very much so. And then I think with my approach anxiety, I think what really just kind of knocks is once you get that initial first word out, it's gone. Like, it's just that build up. And then it's like, I hope I don't say anything stupid. Sometimes I do, and that's okay.
Sometimes what I have in my head doesn't come out of my mouth exactly the way I want it to come out.
Oh, yes, very much so that for me.
But there's a way of getting around approach anxiety. Now, this is the initial approach. This isn't turning the approach into a conversation. But if you know how to get the approach part down, the conversation, well, we talk about that later, but that will become much easier. You have to get through the initial approach first. And once you do that, the conversation is going to work its way out.
Mm-hmm.
So what's one of the techniques that you can actually use in order to get over some approach anxiety? Well, the first one that I do is you see this person, they're amazing looking. Now, beauty is rather common. And
right.
So let's get that part out first. Beauty is common. The thing that you don't want to do is set them on a pedestal to where they become unattainable.
Yeah.
So you see this person, they're a perfect 10 in your head. What I want you to do is pick out two things that they can improve on to actually improve their score. So instead of just being a 10, you're actually going to knock them back down. Instead of 10, they're an 8 or a 6. If she just wore just a little bit less makeup, she would actually look a lot better. If he wore a better shirt, he would actually look a lot better.
Yeah, and I cannot stress this enough. Do not say this stuff out loud. Like,
no, you don't walk up to him and I really like you, but if you wore less makeup, yeah. I mean, that's not going to work. No, you're doing this in your head.
Yeah, so you're going to do this in your head, and it's going to be sort of quick. It's not something that you want to sit around and just kind of stare at someone for 5 minutes, because that's weird.
Yes. Weird and it's creepy, and when you do walk up to them, they're just going to be looking at you going, no.
Right.
I've seen that one happen. No.
Right. No, thank you. I don't want to get kidnapped. That's what it makes me think of. When someone's staring at me for a long time, I'm like, they're definitely going to kidnap me. I'm going to end up in their basement, and I'm done. So basically, yeah.
So that's one of the things that you want to do is that you just want to kind of, in your head, if they can improve this, they would actually make them look a lot better. Now, we're talking physical stuff, and I know that we don't typically talk about physical stuff all that often, but the physical looks are a part of initial attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second thing that you can do is you actually want to get to know the person.
Right.
You want to settle your mind, and when you start talking to them,
mm-hmm.
you want to be able to get across who you are and what you are doing. Now, the narrative that you're putting in your head is they are not unattainable. Now, if you listen to today's show, listen to Thursday's show, because we're going to go into this a lot more in depth. You want to be able to combat the narrative in your head that they are unattainable. Because
Absolutely.
if they see you as unattainable, then what's going to happen is they're going to see that, they're going to read it, and
You're gonna get scared. I think that if you really have the approach anxiety, and I like the turn the 10 to an 8 thing, as I said, don't say it out loud. Like, please do not be weird. And just, make them quick notes. And it's not a big deal. You're not like tearing this person down. You're just saying, okay, this is what makes them approachable. This is why they're not out of my league. And it really puts you in a comforting position, because I think when you see someone who's drop dead gorgeous, we all have that moment that's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That holy shit moment where you're like,
oh my gosh.
fuck, dude. Like, and it happens to all of us. We all have that moment. You won't always need the 10 to 8. Sometimes, or eventually you'll get comfortable enough with approaching people that you don't have to do that. But for initial approach anxiety, I agree 100% with that. Like, just 100%.
Yeah, you just want to kind of knock them back a little bit and make them human. They are a person, and they are not unattainable. It's your own false narrative that you have in your head that makes them unattainable. And if you can't attain them, and let's say by chance they come up and talk to you, well, you can't attain them, so there's no way that they are going to want to go out with you. So it's either you're sabotaging on the front end or you're sabotaging on the back end.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like, that's pretty simple, I think. And it's so weird to think about how do I explain this? How simple. I say this all the time. It's so simple, and it sounds so difficult. Like, when we explain things step by step, I'm like, wow, this seems like a lot. But then when I put it into practice, I'm like, okay, well, I just did that.
Yeah. And it's the same thing that happened with me. When I was learning this stuff initially, I was like, it can't be that easy. But then you actually start doing it, and you're like, damn, why didn't I do this from the beginning?
It almost feels like common sense. It's so true. It's so weird, though. I think the tips for approach anxiety are huge. Like John said, like Thursday, our show is going to really get into depth about it, because we want you to be able to talk to people. As we come back from this coronavirus thing, things open up, clubs open up, you start going out again. You're probably a little rusty.
I know I'm rusty because I'm not out socializing as much as I used to.
Right.
But at work, I get a lot of social practice. And it's just interacting with people in different situations. And I've done this where I was standing at one of our checkpoints, and this girl comes in. I've seen her several times before, and she misunderstood when I first met her what I had said. And she came back through. She looks at me and goes, so what do you like about me? And I just looked at her and I was like, well, it's your personality and stuff. And she's like, so what about my personality? I said, well, I actually have 13 things that I actually rate on. She's like, well, how many do I have? 4.
I would be so annoyed with someone who asked me. Like, I'm one of those people, like, what do you want? Like, the fact you have that patience to me is hilarious, because I would have been like, what is the point? What are we doing here? Like, what are we doing?
Well, I knew by her body language and how she actually stopped. She turned around, and it's the whole situation. I could tell where she was coming from. But I was just looking at her, 4. She's like, out of how many? And I was like, well, I really don't know you yet.
Right. Like, so, I just met you. Slow down, kid.
So with that, I was able to turn that into meeting up with her later and sitting down and talking with her, and then setting up dates and everything else. But it was that situation. I just read it really quick. I just have this list of go-tos that I can pull from in order to start a conversation.
Right.
But if I had built her up in my head to the point that where she's unattainable and there's no way she would be interested in me, none of that would have happened. I would have stumbled over my words, and she would have been like, okay, this isn't what I thought it was, and turn around and left. Yeah. But because I had knocked her down a couple of points and I didn't hold her up on that pedestal, it worked in my favor.
I agree. I think it always will work in your favor when you're able to do that. And when you're rusty with socializing, sometimes you do jump the gun with your mouth a little bit, and you're like, you're the most gorgeous person I've ever met in my entire life. Now, they feel awkward too, because they're like, okay, well.
Yep. Or it's one of those, I've heard this before, so.
Right.
But that's our 10-minute Tuesday. We hope you got something out of it. So what you should be walking away with is, 1, don't set them up on a pedestal. Find at least 2 things that if they improve, they could actually look a lot better. And then after that, you want to align their personality with their looks.
Yep.
Does their personality match how they look.
And sometimes it really doesn't. And it could be, in a good or bad way. Like, I've seen very, very attractive people who open their mouth and they go from like a 10 to a 1. And then I've seen people who I thought were, that happens
Yes.
all the time. And I'm like, oh my God, why do you talk? Like, why are you this? You look like this, but like, why are you this? You look like Johnny Walker, but really you're Captain Morgan. Like, it's upsetting. And then you see those people who you consider like 3s or 4s. They open their mouth and you're like, where have you been?
Damn. Yeah.
Right? Where have you been? And you're like, it's almost as if they're outside, like, because their inside is so beautiful, it transforms their outside into like, it's like the Cinderella thing where the fairy godmother bibbidi bobbidi boops and then they're just like gorgeous. It's crazy. It's crazy how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. They clean up really well.
Right. They go from like Shrek to, or from Shrek's wife to the princess, or they go from the princess to fucking the ogre. It's
Yeah. But there you go. So if you want to know how to overcome your approach anxiety, like pretty much permanently, listen to our Thursday show, because that one, we're going to get a lot more in depth on this. We're going to start breaking it down so that you understand why this works. And with that, we will talk to you on the next one.
That's all for this episode of the Girls Ask Guys show, where all of us learn to master this thing called life together. For more answers to your questions on life and love, be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. And head to girlsaskguyshow.com to submit your questions for a future episode or apply to be a guest on the show. Good luck out there, and we'll catch you next time, right here on the Girls Ask Guys show.